I need you to believe me when I say this. Nothing you've been taught about death, not by your pastors, not by your parents, not by the world, is even close to the truth. And what I'm about to confess will sound like blasphemy, madness, maybe even a cry for help. But I swear to God on the breath still in my lungs that every word you're about to hear is real. I didn't go looking for this revelation. I didn't go chasing aliens, angels, or mysteries of the universe. I was a simple man, Jimmy, a 59-year-old sales rep from California, just trying to survive the tail end of a life that never felt as meaningful as I hoped it would. I thought my biggest worries were an aching back, a declining commission check, and a son who didn't call as much as he should. But then something stepped into my life, something not human, something peaceful, something that had no reason to lie, and revealed the one truth that shattered everything I believed about dying. And before this story is over, you're going to ask yourself the same question I've been asking. If death isn't what we think it is, why are we still afraid of it? I didn't always plan on telling anyone what happened. In fact, for a long time I kept it locked inside, like a wound that refused to close. But lately something's been changing in me. Something I can't fully explain yet, something I think you'll feel too, if you stay with me. And I guess that's why I'm finally speaking now, before the change goes too far, or before I lose whatever part of myself still belongs to this world. The story doesn't really start with me, not the real story anyway. Because once the memories began flooding in, memories I didn't know I had, I realized my encounter wasn't random, it wasn't an accident, it was arranged, or maybe prepared is the better word. Either way, the moment the alien stepped into my life, everything that followed felt like watching a movie I had already seen but somehow forgotten, a destiny written long before I ever took my first breath. Before I continue, just a quick thing. Do not forget to subscribe and drop a comment. Tell me where you are listening from. I want to know how far this story reached. Now let's continue. Jimmy was driving down the lonely stretch of Highway 395 when the first sign appeared. Not a UFO, not a beam of light, just a strange heaviness in the air, like the atmosphere itself was tightening around him. The desert around him glowed with the late afternoon sun, turning the rocks and Joshua trees into long silhouettes that looked almost alive. He had driven this road 100 times before during his sales years, but on this day, the silence felt different. It felt expectant, as though the desert was holding its breath, waiting for something unimaginable to finally unfold. Jimmy didn't notice the subtle shift at first. His mind was too tangled with old regrets, with the echo of his ex-wife's voice, and the sinking realization that his life hadn't turned out the way he once believed it would. But then the radio cut out. Not with static. Just a dead, suffocating silence. Every hair on his arms rose. Something inside him whispered, "Pay attention now." And that's when he saw it. About a quarter mile up the road, something moved across the asphalt. Slow, deliberate, almost graceful. At first, Jimmy thought it was a deer or maybe a wandering coyote, but as he got closer, the shape sharpened into something that didn't fit anything he'd ever seen. Too tall, too slender, too smooth. A figure, 5'8", maybe 5'9", stood in the middle of the road with its back turned to him. Its skin shimmered faintly, not glowing, just reflecting the sunlight in a strange, pearlescent way. Not human, not even close. Jimmy slammed the brakes. The car lurched, tires screeching, dust exploding behind him, as he skidded to a stop just 20 feet away from the figure. His heart hammered against his ribs, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch. It simply stood there as though it had been waiting for him. Then it turned. Its face wasn't monstrous. No giant black eyes, no fanged mouth, no grotesque features. Instead, its face was gentle, almost heartbreakingly calm, with eyes that shimmered like polished stone, deep and expressive, carrying an ancient sadness Jimmy didn't understand then. The being raised one hand slowly, palm outward, not in threat, but in greeting. Jimmy felt an energy ripple through him, not physical, not electrical, but emotional. As if someone had reached into his chest and touched a memory he didn't know he had. He should have been terrified. Anyone would have been. But instead, a strange calm washed over him. And with it came a thought. Not spoken, not heard, but understood. Do not fear. I have come because you are ready. Jimmy stepped out of the car before he even realized what he was doing. The desert wind brushed against his face, carrying the scent of creosote and dust. The alien watched him with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. And then, in a voice that bypassed sound and landed directly in his mind, it spoke. You feel death approaching, it said. You feel the cycle completing. Jimmy froze. He didn't know how the being sensed it, but he had been feeling it for months. A quiet dread, a whisper in his bones that something was ending. And now this creature, this impossible visitor, was confirming it. But before Jimmy could respond, the alien tilted its head slightly as though listening to something far beyond them. Its expression shifted from calm to grave, and it whispered, "Do you want to know why humans die?" Jimmy's mouth went dry. He nodded. The being stepped closer, its presence soothing but overwhelming. Like standing in front of something holy. "Then walk with me," it said, "but understand, once you learn the truth, you will never see life the same way again." Jimmy hesitated, not out of fear, but because something inside him already sensed the magnitude of what was coming. The truth was close, closer than he'd ever imagined. And for the first time in his life, he felt the terrifying certainty that God, the universe, souls, and death were pieces of a puzzle he had never been allowed to see. As he took his first step toward the alien, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with something else entirely. Something he would not understand until it was far too late. And even now, there are parts of that moment I still don't know how to explain. The desert held its breath as Jimmy followed the being off the road, each step sinking into the soft earth as though the ground itself were reluctant to support the weight of what was about to unfold. There was no fear now, only a strange, quiet pull deep inside him. Like a thread he had ignored his whole life was finally being lifted, guiding him toward a truth older than human memory. The being walked a few feet ahead, its movements fluid and precise, leaving no footprints behind. Jimmy noticed this and shivered. It wasn't just its form that defied nature, it was the way reality seemed to bend slightly around it, like heat waves rising off asphalt. The wind softened, the light dimmed, even though the sun still hung high. And Jimmy felt as though he had stepped out of the world he knew and into some kind of threshold where time didn't behave the same. He wanted to speak, to ask what was happening. But the being's presence pressed gently on his thoughts, not silencing him, but urging patience. And then, without turning, it said, "You have felt the ache of ending. You believe it is age, illness, or regret. But these are symptoms, not causes." Jimmy swallowed hard. It was true. He had spent months waking in the middle of the night with the unsettling certainty that something inside him was winding down, like an old watch losing momentum. He thought it was mortality catching up with him at last. But hearing it from this creature, this messenger, felt like confirmation of something far deeper. They reached a rocky outcrop where the desert floor dipped into a narrow ravine. The being stopped and slowly extended its hand toward the jagged horizon. "Life and death are not what you think," it said softly. "Humans believe death is failure, a betrayal of the body, a collapse of biology. But your soul, your consciousness, is not bound to flesh the way you believe. You die because your body becomes misaligned with your energy signature. When the two no longer resonate, the cycle ends." Jimmy stared at the being, his breath catching in his throat. "Resonate?" he whispered, though the word felt fragile in his mouth. The being nodded. "Your consciousness enters the physical realm through a finely tuned, harmonic state. Over time, emotions, trauma, choices, experiences, everything you endure shift your frequency. Eventually, the difference between what your soul emits and what your body can hold becomes too great. When the misalignment reaches its peak, the cycle resets. Humans call this death." Jimmy felt his stomach twist. Not in fear, more like the first time he learned Santa Claus wasn't real, except infinitely heavier. There was a childlike shock in realizing that everything he'd been taught about the fragility of life was merely surface level, a misunderstanding of a cosmic machinery far more intentional than random biology. "Then what happens to us?" he asked shakily. The being turned fully toward him now, and Jimmy felt its gaze settle over him like a warm blanket. "You return to the source chamber," it said. "There your soul is recalibrated, trauma undone, memory restructured. The blueprint of your next life is written. It is not punishment, it is maintenance. The same way a gardener trims branches so the tree can grow stronger." A dry laugh escaped Jimmy, not mocking, just overwhelmed. "And who designed this, God?" The being paused, and the silence that followed felt sacred. "The one you call God breathed the spark," it answered slowly. "But the system, the process, the cycle, that was built by us. Long before human history, long before this planet cooled, we are the caretakers. You might call us overseers, shepherds of consciousness." Jimmy's knees felt weak, but he stayed upright. "So humans die because you made it that way." "We made it necessary," the being corrected. "Your souls grow, they evolve. And when they evolve beyond what a single lifetime can hold, they must return, be rewritten, and begin again. Without death, your consciousness would fracture." Jimmy tried to absorb the words, but they crashed into him like waves, each revelation heavier than the last. He wanted to sit down, but the earth beneath him trembled, so subtly he wondered if it was just his imagination. The being stepped closer. "Do not fear this truth," it said. "Death is not an ending, it is a returning. Every human you have ever loved has walked this cycle countless times. Many souls you meet in life you have met before." Jimmy felt suddenly colder. "Then why don't we remember?" The being tilted its head. "If you remembered every life, every failure and every triumph, your mind would collapse under the weight. A soul needs a blank page each time in order to grow. The forgetting is mercy. A single word echoed through Jimmy's mind. Mercy, as though carried on a divine whisper. He didn't know whether to cry or fall to his knees. Instead, he asked the question, burning deepest in his chest. And Jesus? Where does he fit in all of this? The being's expression softened with something that looked almost like reverence. Jesus transcended the cycle, it said. He came to show humans the path to harmony, to teach you how to align your spirit without needing the reset. His resurrection was not a miracle of flesh, but a demonstration of perfect resonance. He became one with the source while still in physical form. Jimmy felt tears blur his vision. The wind shifted, brushing his cheek with a gentle warmth. He showed you what humans can become, the being continued, a being who no longer needs to die. Jimmy stared at it, heart pounding. You're telling me death was never supposed to be our prison? No, it said. It was your protection. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The desert stretched out endlessly around them. But Jimmy felt as though he was standing in a sacred chamber far beyond Earth. And then the being added, almost in a whisper, but the cycle is changing. Some humans are beginning to evolve faster than expected. The next stage is approaching. Jimmy's heart skipped. What stage? The being glanced at him, and something ancient flickered in its eyes. The stage where death becomes optional. The words hung in the air like a prophecy. Jimmy's breath caught, and something deep inside him stirred. A warmth spreading through his chest he could not explain. The being watched him closely, almost knowingly, as if it could already sense the shift beginning. Jimmy opened his mouth to ask what it meant. Why him? Why now? But before he could speak, the ground beneath them vibrated with a low hum, and the being whispered, "We are not alone here." A chill raced through Jimmy's spine. Someone or something was approaching, and the being looked suddenly alert. Whatever came next was not part of the plan. The humming beneath Jimmy's feet deepened, spreading through the earth like a pulse, steady and rhythmic, as if the desert itself had a heartbeat. The alien turned sharply toward the horizon, its eyes narrowing in a way that made Jimmy's stomach twist. Until now, the being had been calm in a way that felt ancient and unshakable. But this shift, this alertness, this sudden tightening of its posture made Jimmy realize something he hadn't considered. If a creature like this could feel concern, then whatever approached had to be extraordinary. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the rocks, the sand, even the air. Jimmy glanced around, expecting military trucks or helicopters or some hidden government force to emerge from behind the hills. But there was nothing, no movement, no dust trails, no vehicles. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was harmonic, like a distant choir holding a single note. The alien lifted a hand, and instantly the vibration softened, not disappearing, but receding enough for Jimmy to focus. "They are listening," the being said quietly. Jimmy swallowed. "Who?" The alien didn't answer immediately. Instead, it scanned the sky with an intensity that made Jimmy's chest tighten. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sand, and the air shimmered with heat. But there was a coldness creeping through Jimmy's bones, like some unseen presence had seeped into the atmosphere. "There are others like me," the alien finally said. "Caretakers, observers, watchers of the cycle. They do not intervene unless necessary." Jimmy's heart pounded. "So, are they coming here?" The being hesitated. That alone terrified Jimmy more than the hum. "They are not coming," it said. "They are checking." Jimmy blinked. "Checking what?" The alien turned toward him slowly, its eyes no longer soft but piercing, heavy, with a weight that made Jimmy feel suddenly fragile. "Checking whether you are ready." A cold ripple shot through him. Ready for what? The alien stepped closer, its presence grounding and powerful, and Jimmy felt as though someone was about to flip through the deepest pages of his soul. "Some humans," the being said, "reach a point in their final incarnation where their soul's energy becomes so refined, so aligned, that the cycle begins to break naturally. They begin to transcend death. They begin to resonate with the source without returning to it. They begin to remember." Jimmy felt the breath leave his lungs. Remember what? Everything. The word hit him like a blow. Everything, every life, every incarnation, every choice. Every time he had been on earth, every soul he had loved, every failure, every victory. The weight of such memory felt unbearable, yet something inside him trembled with a strange, longing ache. Had he felt something like this before? A quiet déjà vu? A stirring in his chest? A whisper of recognition in dreams he didn't understand? "But I'm just a salesman," Jimmy said, voice cracking. "I'm nobody." The alien shook its head slowly. No soul is nobody, and no awakening is accidental. The hum beneath them intensified again, brief, sharp, like a warning note, then faded into silence so complete it made Jimmy's ears ring. The alien's eyes drifted toward the sky, and Jimmy followed its gaze, seeing nothing but fading blue and streaks of orange where the sun was sinking behind the mountains. But he felt something, a pressure, a presence, like invisible eyes watching from beyond the veil. When the alien finally spoke, its voice was almost mournful. "They are waiting to see if you break." Jimmy felt his chest tighten. "Break?" The alien nodded. Most humans, when touched by the early stages of awakening, collapse under fear, denial, or spiritual dissonance. They cling to their old understanding of life and death, unable to accept the truth. When that happens, the cycle resets early. Jimmy felt his throat constrict. "You mean they die?" "They return," the being corrected gently. "Their blueprint must be rewritten. Their soul must be rebalanced." Jimmy stared at the ground, his heart thundering. A terrifying thought rose inside him, not spoken by the alien, not placed by any outside force, but emerging from somewhere deep within himself, like a forgotten memory resurfacing. What if I've been here before? What if I've lived this moment in another life, this desert, this being, this revelation? What if this isn't new at all? He didn't say the thoughts aloud, but the alien reacted anyway, turning to him sharply as if it had felt the flicker of memory inside him. Its expression softened. "Yes," it whispered. "You have walked this path before." Jimmy felt dizzy, his legs unsteady. "How many times?" "As many as needed," the alien replied. "You return until your soul can remain aligned without resetting." Jimmy pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. Everything was too big, too vast, too overwhelming. Yet beneath the fear, another sensation stirred, an almost magnetic pull, a recognition that resonated in his bones, like a song he had once known. The alien stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Jimmy's shoulder. Its touch was warm, grounding, almost human. "The cycle is mercy," it said, "but transcendence is purpose." Jimmy felt emotion choke him. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why now?" The alien's eyes shimmered with something that looked like sorrow. "Because your time in the cycle is almost complete. Your soul is nearing the threshold where it will no longer need to die." The words struck Jimmy with a silent thunder, and for a moment he could not breathe. His heartbeat slowed, steadying into a strange, rhythmic pulse that echoed faintly in his ears. He felt warmth spreading through his chest again. The same warmth he had felt earlier, but stronger now, expanding, blooming like a rising sun behind his ribs. The alien watched him carefully. "Do you feel it?" Jimmy nodded slowly, tears sliding down his cheeks without him realizing. "Yes," he whispered. I think I do." The alien lowered its hand, stepping back. "Good. The Watchers sense it too. They will not interfere now." Jimmy exhaled shakily, relief and terror twisting together. The alien's voice softened. "Come, there is more you must learn before the change begins." Jimmy wiped his face, nodding, still trembling. He took a step toward the alien when suddenly the wind shifted again, sweeping across the desert with a force that made Jimmy stagger. The sky flickered, just for a moment. A brief, impossible moment. As if something behind reality had pulsed. The alien froze. Jimmy, heart pounding, looked up. And what he saw made his blood run cold. A shape was forming in the sky, something vast, something luminous, something that was not supposed to be seen by human eyes. And whatever it was descending. The alien whispered. They were not supposed to come this close. The sky did not split open with thunder or light. Instead, it seemed to bend, folding inward like a sheet of glass, warping under invisible heat. A soft glow pulsed above Jimmy and the alien, a glow so faint it might have been dismissed as a trick of the eyes, if not for the way the alien stiffened, its gaze sharpening with something dangerously close to fear. Jimmy stared upward, his breath locked in his throat as the shape continued forming in the sky, not descending in a straight line, but unfurling slowly, deliberately, like a colossal petal opening from another realm. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't anything mechanical or metallic. It looked alive. A vast, translucent form hovered just beyond the visible spectrum. Its edges shimmering with colors Jimmy had no name for, hues that flickered between existence and imagination. If he looked directly at it, the shape blurred, slipping from his vision. But when he looked at it from the corner of his eye, it became clearer. An immense, ethereal, manta ray-like being gliding through the sky, its wings undulating silently, casting no shadow, producing no heat. It was beautiful, terrifying. Jimmy felt his knees weaken as a wave of pressure rolled over him, not physical but emotional, like standing before an ancient cathedral or hearing a hymn that reached into the soul and pulled out memories buried deeper than thought. The alien beside him raised both hands slightly, its posture respectful, deferential. "Do not look directly at it for too long," it murmured. "Your mind is not yet prepared." Jimmy tore his gaze away, gasping as the pressure eased. What? What is that? The alien's expression was unreadable. A watcher. One of the oldest. They rarely manifest in visible form. This one must have been monitoring your resonance for some time. Jimmy's pulse throbbed in his ears. You said they were just checking, observing. Why are they showing themselves? The alien hesitated, its eyes fixed on the immense being drifting silently above. Because your awakening is happening faster than anticipated, they are assessing whether intervention is required. Intervention? Jimmy echoed. What does that mean? The alien lowered its gaze to him, and for the first time since they met, its calm facade faltered just slightly. If your resonance becomes unstable, or if your awakening triggers a collapse, the watcher may force a reset. The word hit Jimmy like ice water. A reset, he whispered. You mean they could kill me? No, the alien said firmly. Your soul cannot be harmed, but your cycle could restart. A loss of memory, a new body, a new life. You would begin again. Jimmy felt the ground sway beneath him. Start over, forget everything, lose this moment, lose this truth. The thought shattered something inside him. I don't want that, he muttered, voice trembling. I don't want to forget. The alien stepped closer, its presence grounding him with gentle strength. Then remain calm. Do not resist what you feel inside. Do not run from the resonance. Let it unfold naturally. Jimmy nodded shakily, drawing slow breaths, though fear coiled tight in his stomach. Above them, the watcher coasted in a slow arc, its wings rippling through the air without sound. Every movement seemed deliberate, intelligent, ancient. The desert wind stilled entirely, as if the world itself paused to witness the creature's presence. And then something impossible happened. A feeling descended from the watcher, washing over Jimmy like a soft, invisible light. There was no color, no shape, no physical sensation. Instead, he felt his emotions spill openly, his memories stretching thin, as though a gentle hand was turning the pages of his life one by one. He saw flashes, moments he had forgotten, moments he had buried, moments that didn't even feel like his. A child laughing by a riverbank under a sky with two moons. A woman with silver eyes touching his face lovingly. A battlefield lit by torches where he held a dying friend who looked strangely like his son. A monastery carved into the cliffs where he prayed to a god who had no name. A stone chamber filled with light where a voice, not human, not alien, whispered, "Return when ready." Jimmy gasped and collapsed to his knees as the images vanished, leaving him trembling, breathless, overwhelmed. "What was that?" he choked out. The alien knelt beside him. "Memory fragments," it said gently. "Pieces of your past incarnations. The watcher is evaluating your stability." Jimmy wiped tears from his face without realizing they were there. It felt so real. Because it was. Jimmy looked up at the alien, eyes wide, heart pounding with a new, raw ache. "I've lived before, many times, and I loved people I don't even remember." The alien placed a hand on his shoulder again. "You will remember them when the cycle ends. All of them." Jimmy closed his eyes, emotion crashing over him like a tide. Above them, the Watcher gave a slow, sweeping movement, its presence humming through the air, with a resonance that vibrated deep within Jimmy's ribs. The alien stood, lifting its face toward the luminous being. "He is holding," it said softly. "He is not collapsing." The Watcher's form flickered, brightening for just a moment, then began to drift upward, its wings rippling as it ascended toward the fading sky. In seconds, its shape blurred into the horizon, dissolving like smoke in sunlight, until nothing remained except the desert wind beginning to stir once more. Jimmy exhaled shakily. "Is it gone?" "Yes," the alien murmured. "For now." Jimmy pushed himself to his feet, legs shaking. "Was that thing judging me?" "Not judging, assessing, protecting the integrity of the cycle," Jimmy swallowed, still trembling. "And what did it see?" The alien held his gaze for a long, heavy moment. "It saw a soul nearing completion." Jimmy felt a chill run through him. Not fear, but awe. Deep, life-altering awe. The alien turned toward the ravine again. "Come," it said quietly. "Now that the Watcher has withdrawn, there is something I must show you. Something only those close to transcendence can witness." Jimmy hesitated, the warmth blooming in his chest again, stronger now, pulsing like a second heartbeat. He pressed a hand to his ribs, feeling the strange resonance move through him. "What's happening to me?" The alien regarded him with a solemn, almost reverent expression. "Your soul is aligning faster. Your body is struggling to keep pace. The transformation has begun." Jimmy's breath caught. "Transformation?" "Yes," the alien said. "And if you continue, you will soon understand why humans die, and why you may not need to anymore." The desert wind blew softly, carrying the scent of something faintly sweet. Jimmy took a step forward, then another. The alien's eyes brightened. "Good," it whispered. "You are ready for the next truth." But deep in the ravine ahead, something glowed, and whatever it was, Jimmy instinctively knew. His life would never be the same once he stepped into that light. The sun had slipped below the horizon by the time we made it back to the cabin. The sky still held a faint, bruised purple glow, stretched thin like a fading memory. Inside, the air hummed with leftover warmth from the old wood stove. Elim entered first, ducking beneath the doorway with the careful grace of someone who had long ago learned to make himself smaller in fragile spaces. I followed behind, the crunch of gravel fading as the door shut behind us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't silence exactly, more like a pause in the world, a held breath where everything waited to see what would happen next. Elim walked toward the small wooden table in the corner, tracing one long finger over the surface as though reading the story of every scratch and knot in the grain. He paused, then turned to me. "Your world grows loud at night," he said softly. "But inside here, it is gentle." His voice, always calm, carried a weight now. A weight that said something was coming. I pulled out a chair and sat. "You're acting strange," I said. "What's going on?" Elim lowered himself into the opposite seat. Even sitting, he towered over the table. The dim lantern light painted soft highlights along the smooth contours of his pale skin, turning him into a portrait of mystery wrapped in quiet sorrow. "I have been deciding whether to tell you something," he replied, Something that will change what you think of dreams and of yourself. My heartbeat ticked up. You already told me dreams are echoes of memory. He shook his head. Only one layer. Layer of what? Truth. His eyes lifted to mine, large, reflective, filled with a depth I could barely comprehend. When Elim looked at you, it wasn't like being seen. It was like being known. You believe dreams are the mind sorting itself, he said. Cleaning, organizing, healing. He tilted his head. But that is like calling the ocean a puddle, because you only dipped your hand into the shore. I swallowed. Then, what are they really? Elim didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached toward the lantern, dimmed the flame slightly, and let the shadows rise around us like a slow, gentle tide. The darker the room grew, the softer his expression seemed, as though night peeled away layers of separation between us. He folded his hands on the table. Your dreams, he said, are not just from you. They are not contained within your skull. They are... He searched for the word, then found it. Shared. Shared? I repeated. With who? He drew a slow breath. With everyone. I stared at him. That doesn't make sense. To you, perhaps, he said calmly, but to us, it is the foundation of our understanding of consciousness. Every being with awareness contributes to what you call the dream field, a collective current, a river of thought and feeling that flows through every mind, every night. My skin prickled. You mean like some kind of hive mind? His eyes softened at the oversimplification. No, nothing so controlling, nothing so sharp. It is gentle, like wind passing through open windows. Each mind touches another's, and each soul whispers to another soul. I leaned back, heart thudding. But I don't feel other people's dreams. You're not meant to feel them, he replied. You are meant to receive them, and in receiving them, you grow. I blinked. Elim leaned forward. Tell me, have you ever dreamed of a stranger you had never met? A place you have never been? A grief you never lived, a joy you cannot explain? My breath caught. 100 memories flooded back, faces I didn't know, worlds I'd never seen, emotions too large to belong only to me. He saw the answer in my expression before I spoke. Yes, I whispered. All the time. He nodded. That is the river. For a long stretch of quiet, the only sound was the crackle of the lantern flame. I rubbed my hands together. If this dream river is real, why don't we remember? Why don't we know it's happening? Elim's voice gentled. Because your waking mind would collapse beneath the weight of every memory it did not earn. He paused. Your consciousness protects you by filtering the river into symbols, stories, fragments. Each dream you receive is shaped by your inner world, your wounds, your hopes, your fears. You turn the shared current into something personal. I swallowed. Hard. That means all my life, all those dreams were not just yours, Elim finished softly. You have been swimming in a sea of humanity without realizing it. My chest tightened under a strange mix of awe and fear. But it is not only humans, he added gently. Life dreams. all life. My breath froze. You mean animals, or? Yes, he said, and more than that. The room felt suddenly too small. Elim's expression shifted, tender and heavy, as though what came next was the part he had struggled to reveal. You asked why we came, he said quietly. I nodded. We came, he whispered, because the river is changing. A cold ripple crawled up my spine. Changing how? The dreams of your species are growing louder, heavier, filled with fear. And when the river grows dark, all who drink from it suffer. I stared at him. Elim, what are you saying? He lowered his gaze. That humanity is not dreaming alone, and your nightmares are beginning to spread. The lantern flickered. The room felt too still. Then Elim lifted his head again, eyes shining with a solemn ache that felt older than anything I could imagine. And that, he said, is why I must tell you what we learned about him. The one whose dreams echoed through 1,000 years, the one you call. He hesitated, respectfully. Jesus. I felt the world tilt. Elim, I whispered, what does Jesus have to do with dreams? He exhaled slowly. Everything. For a moment, everything inside the cabin seemed to stop moving. The air, the shadows, even the warmth from the lantern. Only Elim's quiet breathing remained, steady and almost mournful, like someone standing at the edge of a truth they wished they didn't have to speak. I swallowed hard. Elim, what does Jesus have to do with dreams? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pressed both palms flat on the table, fingers long and still, as though anchoring himself before stepping into deep water. When my people study a mind, he began softly, we do not look at thoughts the way you do. Thoughts are shallow. They flicker, change, disappear. What matters is the pattern beneath them, the dreaming pattern, the blueprint of a soul. His eyes rose to mine. And when we look at your species, certain patterns shine brighter than others. Some minds barely ripple, others make waves. But once, only once in the history of your kind, there was a mind that did not ripple, or wave, or echo. He paused. It radiated. My breath caught. You're talking about Jesus? Elim nodded once. Slowly, reverently. The one whose dreaming pattern lit the river like a sun. I stared at him, unable to speak. You see him as a prophet, a teacher, a savior, Elim continued. Some of your people see him as myth. Others see him as a man, but when we studied the river across time, across the current that touches all beings, he exhaled, we found his dream. A chill rolled through me, but not from fear, something deeper. His actual dream, like one he had while sleeping? Yes? Elim's voice softened into something almost fragile. Every being leaves a signature in the river, an imprint, but his was different. His dream was not shaped by fear or desire or confusion. It was not symbolic or broken. It was whole. I leaned forward, heart pounding. What did he dream about? Elim closed his eyes, recalling, almost reliving. Light, he whispered. But not the light of your sun, not warmth, not brightness, a different kind, a light that is alive. I felt something shift in the room, as if the air leaned closer to listen. In his dream, Elim continued, he stood in a vast, endless space, no ground, no sky. Only an ocean of living light that bent around him like a presence, not a voice, not a person, but an awareness, gentle, immense, eternal. He opened his eyes again, and that light spoke to him. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. What did it say? It did not speak in words, Elim said. But its message was simple. We are one. We have always been one. And the river will someday bring you home. A trembling quiet settled over me. Elim's gaze softened, almost pleading for me to understand. You believe Jesus came to teach, to heal, to show the way. And he did. But what you do not know, what we only learned by studying the imprint of his dream, is that he saw the collective soul. He touched the river fully awake. And no human before or after him has done the same. My voice cracked. So, you're saying he wasn't just having a dream? Elim shook his head gently. No. He was witnessing what all life returns to. The place you come from. The place you go back to. And the place that touches you every night when you sleep. My skin tingled. Are you saying Jesus understood the river? He didn't just understand it, Elim whispered. He belonged to it completely. A long silence followed. One that pressed on the chest in a way that felt almost holy. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. If he saw all that, why didn't he tell anyone? Why didn't he explain dreams? Why didn't he say any of this? Elim tilted his head. He did. A shiver ran through me. But humans hear through fear, he said softly. You interpret through symbols. He spoke of unity. You heard obedience. He spoke of returning to the source. You heard punishment and reward. He spoke of love, and you made it law. The words settled like dust, heavy, true. Elim's voice dropped lower. Jesus understood the river, but he also saw its danger. Danger? I whispered. Yes. The alien leaned forward, tapping one finger lightly against the table, once, like a soft, warning knock. A river of shared dreams can heal, he said, but it can also be poisoned. My stomach tightened. And right now, your species is drowning in nightmares. A knot formed in my throat. What kind of nightmares? Elim hesitated. Then slowly, deliberately, he placed his hand over mine. The kind that spread, he whispered. The kind that changed the river itself. Outside, the wind began to rise, soft at first, then swelling against the cabin walls with a low, mournful hum, as though the night itself had been listening. Elim, I said, voice shaking. What happens if the river keeps darkening? His eyes reflected the lantern flame, small, trembling, like hope on the edge of going out. Then, he said quietly, what Jesus saw in his dream, the light that calls all life home, will grow farther from you, harder to reach. The wind howled once, and Elim's final words landed like a stone in my chest, and humanity will sleep in shadows. The wind outside the cabin didn't sound natural anymore. It wasn't just a gust pushing against the walls, it had a rhythm to it, a strange pulsing, like a heartbeat echoing through the timber. Elim didn't seem bothered by it. If anything, the sound made him grow even quieter, like something he'd hoped to avoid was now moving closer to us. "Jimmy," he said, still holding my hand with those long, cool fingers. "You must understand something before I go any further. The river of dreams is not simply a place, not a vision, not a metaphor. It is the current of consciousness connecting every living soul. When Jesus touched it fully awake, he saw what binds all beings together." I nodded, barely breathing. "But," Elim continued slowly, "he also saw what could unbind them." My voice came out thin. "You said the river is darkening. What does that mean? What's causing it?" Elim released my hand and folded his fingers together, his posture almost prayer-like. "Humans," he whispered, "humans are causing it." His words hit like a cold blade. "Your people generate fear faster than any species we have ever observed, not just individual fear, collective fear. Modern life amplifies it, multiplies it, broadcasts it. You fear death, sickness, loneliness, losing control, but above all, you fear uncertainty." A shiver crawled up my spine. "And fear," he said, "leaves a residue in the river, a shadow." I swallowed hard. "Are you saying we're poisoning our own souls?" "No," he replied gently. "Fear cannot poison a soul. A soul is eternal. But it can blind one. It can drown the light that guides you. It can separate the mind from the river. And when that separation becomes too great, your species begins to lose its way." Outside, the wind thumped against the cabin like fists pounding on a door. "Elim," I whispered, "is this why humans die?" A long pause, then a small nod. "Yes," he said, "and no." My frustration flared. "What does that even mean?" Elim looked at me with a softness that made me feel like a child being asked to trust something too big to understand. "Humans die," he explained, "because the soul's resonance becomes unstable when the mind is disconnected from the river. Death resets the alignment. It brings you back to the source, cleanses you, harmonizes you, and prepares you for another cycle." He leaned slightly forward. "But the shadow, the darkness you are creating, interferes with that process." My heart froze. "What happens when it interferes?" His eyes dimmed. "Some souls return slower. Some return confused. Some return without lessons they were meant to learn. Some fragment. Some delay their reincarnation for lifetimes, and the worst cases," he hesitated, "never return at all." A sharp cold filled my stomach. "Never return?" "Lost in the river," Elim said, voice barely above a breath. "Not destroyed. Nothing eternal can be destroyed, but trapped, disconnected. Wandering through memories that are not their own. They drift in a state your people might call purgatory." I stared at him, horrified. "And this is happening now? To us?" "It has already begun," he answered. A log in the fireplace cracked sharply, making both of us jump. The glow rose and fell, casting long, trembling shadows across the floor. For a moment I felt like the darkness in the room wasn't coming from the night outside, it was coming from the story Elim was telling. Jesus saw this in his dream, Elim said. He saw the shadow forming centuries before it began. That is why he taught what he taught, why he spoke in parables, why he asked your species to love one another. My voice broke. To stop the river from darkening. Yes, Elim said quietly. Love refracts fear. It creates light in the river. When humans forgive, trust, pray, hope, or sacrifice for one another, those moments shine brighter than suns. They push back the shadow. The wind slammed hard against the cabin this time, rattling the window pane. I flinched, but Elim didn't move. He just turned his head slightly, like he was listening. Elim, I whispered, what's outside? He didn't look at me when he answered. A ripple, he murmured. A disturbance in the river. It is following us. My throat tightened. Following you or me? Finally, he turned his gaze back to me, and his expression told me everything. Humans who begin to understand the river become visible to the shadow, he whispered. It watches those who seek the truth. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. Elim, I said, what does the shadow want? He closed his eyes. It wants to prevent evolution. What evolution? When he opened his eyes again, something in them glowed faintly, like a reflection of some hidden inner fire. There will come a generation, he said slowly, when humans begin to outgrow the death cycle, a generation whose souls reharmonize without needing to return to the source. I felt the words sink into me like weightless stones, soft, heavy, impossible. A generation who will no longer die. My breath stopped. Elim, is that real? Yes, he said, and when it begins, the river will change forever. Humanity will take its first step beyond mortality, and the shadow, the darkness forming in your collective dreaming, cannot allow that to happen. The wind outside went silent, completely silent. A quiet so unnatural, it hurt the ears. Elim, I whispered, voice trembling. Is that generation already alive? He studied me for a long, unbearable moment, as if deciding whether to speak the truth. Then he said 3 words that made my entire body go cold. It has started. And before I could breathe or think or even react, he added one more sentence, one that felt like the ground dropping out from under my soul. Jimmy, you are part of it. When Elim said those words, Jimmy, you are part of it. Something inside me buckled, not like fear, not like shock. It was deeper, stranger, like a quiet tremor in the center of my being, as if my soul recognized something my mind wasn't ready for. I stared at him, trying to swallow the dryness in my throat. Elim, that can't be right. I'm 59, I've felt my body slowing down for years. My knees ache, my back's a mess. I'm tired most of the time. How could I be part of something like that? Elim's expression didn't change. Your body is aging, he said softly. Your soul is not. That sent a cold shiver through me. This evolution, he continued, is not physical, not at first. It begins in the dreaming pattern, in the river. It begins when a soul starts to harmonize without instruction, without undergoing death first. I shook my head. I don't understand. You're not meant to, not yet, he replied. But you've felt it, haven't you? Strange moments, flickers, nay.
Times when you were awake but dreaming, or dreaming but awake. I froze. My mind shot to the past few months, moments I'd ignored, dismissed as stress or exhaustion. Waking in the middle of the night with a ringing in my ears that wasn't sound but presence. Dreaming of people I'd never met, yet somehow remembered. Catching glimpses of light behind my eyelids that didn't feel like dreams at all. My breath thinned. How do you know that? Because those are the first signs, Elim said quietly. Signs that the soul is gently loosening its tether to the old cycle. My heart hammered in my chest. Elim, are you telling me I'm not going to die? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up from the table. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he was bracing himself against some invisible pressure. I am telling you, he said, that your path may differ from what humanity has known for thousands of years, but nothing is guaranteed. Not yet. That not yet felt like a blade of ice. I pushed myself up too fast. My chair scraped loudly across the wooden floor. Why me? Why would I be part of something like this? I'm nobody. I sell home security systems. I've lived a regular life. I've made mistakes, sure, but nothing special. Why me? Elim turned toward the window where the reflection of the lantern made the glass shimmer like liquid amber. Because the river does not choose the powerful, he said. It chooses the open. I swallowed. Open to what? Truth, he said. Loss, wonder, faith, curiosity, pain, transformation. Humans who are cracked open by life. Tragedy, heartbreak, aging. Regret often become the clearest vessels for evolution. A lump rose in my throat. Too many memories hit me at once. My divorce, my estranged daughter. The nights I fell asleep crying in the dark. The mornings I woke up wondering how life had drifted so far from what I imagined. Elim, I whispered, barely holding myself together. I'm not a strong man. He turned back to me, eyes filled with something that resembled compassion. You mistake survival for weakness, he said softly. But the river sees differently. It sees the way you keep walking when you want to stop. The way you search for meaning even after losing pieces of yourself. The way you speak to God even when you feel unheard. He paused. The river sees your heart. My vision blurred, tears rising fast and hot. Elim, if what you're saying is true, and does that mean God chose me, or that someone plans all this? Elim stepped closer. The light Jesus saw in his dream, he said, is what you call God. It is the source, the architect, the breath behind all creation. It is not bound by form, it does not speak in words, it speaks in alignment, resonance, calling. A faint tremor entered his voice like reverence, and it does call. Not often, but when it does, the chosen hear it in dreams. I felt my pulse spike. Jimmy, he continued, have you heard your name spoken in a dream recently? My blood turned cold. I had. Twice in the last month, a soft voice, gentle yet echoing through me, whispering my name in the dark, not frightening, not commanding, just calling. Wholly familiar, impossible. I forced myself to meet Elim's gaze when it.
What does it mean? It means, Elim said, your soul is being awakened early. You are sensing the river while still fully alive. That is the beginning of deathlessness. A deep stillness settled over the cabin, so heavy it felt like time had thickened. Elim, I said, trembling, if this is all true, what happens next? His eyes flickered to the door. There will be tests. The silence tightened. Tests, I whispered. Yes. The shadow will not sit idle. It will try to disrupt your alignment, twist your dreams, weaken your belief. It may try to convince you that all of this, your awakening, the calling, the light, is madness. His voice grew darker. It will try to isolate you, fracture you, pull you away from the river. My breath shook. How do I fight it? Elim stepped closer until he stood directly in front of me. His presence calm but fierce, like a teacher preparing a student for something monumental. You do not fight it, he said. You outshine it. My chest tightened. How? He placed his hand gently on my shoulder. By loving, he whispered. By forgiving, by surrendering fear, by praying even when no answer comes, by trusting the light that has already begun calling your name. The wind outside began to rise again, but this time it wasn't angry. It hummed like a distant choir, low and almost mournful. Elim? I said quietly. How much time do I have before the tests begin? He looked at me. Not with fear, not with pity, but with an ancient, knowing sadness. They already have. My stomach dropped. And then, before I could speak, before I could question,
Before I could even process, Elim reached up and touched the side of my head with 2 fingers. A warmth flooded through me, bright, overwhelming, like sunlight passing through bone. Your river is opening, he whispered, and soon you will see what waits beyond death. The room pulsed with light. I gasped, and everything went white. The white wasn't just brightness. It wasn't even light in the way a person understands it. It was awareness, pure, infinite awareness, washed over me like a wave breaking in slow motion. I tried to breathe, but breath didn't seem to exist here. Neither did heat or cold. I had no sense of body, no sense of weight, no sense of direction. And yet, I wasn't afraid. For the first time in my life, fear didn't even feel like an option. Something held me, not with hands, not with force, with presence.
I don't know how long I floated in that weightless, bodiless state. Seconds, hours, it felt like being suspended inside God's heartbeat. Then, slowly, the white began to ripple. Dark shapes moved beneath its surface, not shadows, not forms, but memories. Mine. Childhood laughter. My mother's voice calling me inside before sunset. My first heartbreak. My daughter's tiny fingers wrapped around mine. All the pain I'd buried, all the love I'd forgotten to feel. They drifted around me like petals caught in a current. Elim? I tried to speak, but the words didn't come out of a mouth. They just formed as intention. And something heard. The white parted. A space opened, soft, glowing, shaped not like a tunnel, but like a womb of light, bending gently inward, inviting me deeper. It pulsed with a rhythm I recognized instantly, though I didn't understand how. I was hearing my own soul. Elim's voice came from everywhere at once. Do not resist. You are entering the source chamber. I drifted forward, as if pulled by a tide as old as creation. The chamber expanded around me, spherical, endless, alive. Strands of shimmering gold and silver floated in the air like threads waiting to be woven. They vibrated when I passed them, emitting soft tones that felt like music played directly into my spirit. Elim, I whispered again. What is this? This, he said gently, is where every soul comes between lifetimes, where the blueprint resets, where the fears dissolve, where the river cleanses the mind. Humans call it many names: heaven, purgatory, the veil, the afterlife, but all cultures describe it imperfectly. They remember this place only in fragments. A thread of gold touched me, a warmth, tender and indescribable, poured through me like liquid sunrise. I felt forgiven. I felt known. I felt unbroken. Elim, I whispered. Am I dying? Not dying, he said. Entering. The chamber pulsed. But you will not go far, he added. Not like others. You are not being cleansed, you are being awakened. A vibration shuddered through the chamber like a distant thunder, but without sound. The gold and silver threads rippled, bending outward as if something massive had brushed against the edge of the universe. Elim, I said, suddenly uneasy. What was that? He didn't answer. The chamber dimmed slightly, not darkened, dimmed, like something outside was lowering its hand into the water of a clear lake. Elim? Still no reply. A new vibration swept through, stronger this time. The threads trembled, flickering between light and shadow. The once perfect harmony fractured into dissonance. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not from Elim. Not from the chamber, from the shadow. It seeped in like smoke through a crack, curling around me with a cold intelligence that made every memory inside me recoil. It didn't speak in words, it spoke in fractures, in broken images, in doubt. A hospital bed, my father dying, my daughter turning away from me, my failures, my aging face reflected in a bathroom mirror, the fear I tried to bury my whole life. The whisper pressed against me, you aren't chosen. I felt myself trembling, even without a body. You aren't evolving, the chamber flickered again. You will die like everyone else. The warmth in me dimmed. The gold threads pulled back, retreating. The chamber thinned like fog, losing its density. The shadow pressed harder, filling my head with every fear I'd ever lived through. You think God would choose you? You think the light wants you? You think you matter? I felt myself sinking, drowning, falling. And then a second voice rose from within me, not mine, not Elim's. Something older than memory and younger than breath. A whisper so gentle, so small, I almost missed it beneath the noise of the shadow. Jimmy. My soul froze. The voice wasn't mocking, it wasn't cold, it wasn't uncertain. It was warm, steady, familiar. I felt it inside me, like a hand resting over my heart. Jimmy. Breathe. I don't know why that word hit me so hard. Breathe, when I didn't even have lungs in that moment, but it grounded me. Pulled me back into myself. The chamber brightened a little. A hum returned. The threads quivered with anticipation. Elim, I whispered. Something's here. Something else. His voice finally returned, strained. That is not something. That is someone. I felt a presence behind me, not towering, not terrifying, gentle, near, like someone stepping quietly into a room full of trembling. Elim, I whispered desperately, is this Jesus? The chamber vibrated, not with fear, not with warning, with recognition. A warmth deeper than anything I had ever felt, wrapped around me, not touching me, yet holding me. I didn't see a face, I didn't see a form, I didn't need to. The presence was overwhelming love distilled into pure being. The shadow hissed and shrank back like smoke, fleeing sunlight. I didn't hear a sermon. I didn't hear a command. I didn't hear doctrine or doctrine-breaking revelations. I heard only 3 words. You are returning. The chamber pulsed. Light surged. The shadow was pushed completely out. The threads flared gold, brighter than every star I'd ever seen, and a rush of warmth exploded through me, like a supernova of peace. Elim, I cried, what's happening? The light has acknowledged you, Elim answered, his voice almost reverent. You have been seen. The awakening is complete. The chamber folded inward. The white surged again. The sense of weight returned, then gravity, then breath. And suddenly, I was back in the cabin. I collapsed forward, gasping, gripping the edge of the wooden table, as if I'd just been pulled from the bottom of the ocean. Elim was standing over me,
watching with eyes that shimmered faintly with relief. You survived the shadow, he whispered. Few do. I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. Elim, what did that presence say? He answered softly. It told you the truth. My breath hitched. That I'm returning to life? No, he said. That you are returning changed. He knelt down to meet my eye level. You will not die like others, Jimmy. Your soul has aligned inside the river while awake. You have bypassed the need for cosmic reset. Your death cycle is dissolving. My pulse hammered. Elim, what does that mean for me? It means, he said calmly, that death is no longer your destination. Only transformation. A silence filled the room, heavy and holy. How long do I have before it begins? It has already begun, Elim whispered.
Your dreams will shift, your memories will deepen, your senses will sharpen. You will feel the river flowing through you even while awake. I felt my whole body tremble. Elim, what happens now? He stood. You wait, you pray. You follow the call when it comes. But where are you going? His face softened with something like sadness. My task is complete. I was sent to ensure your awakening did not fail. Others will follow. Some to guide, some to challenge. The shadow has not finished with you. I swallowed hard. Will I see you again? Elim stepped toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. Yes, he said, when you reach the place where death cannot follow. He opened the door. A cold wind swept in, carrying the smell of pine and starlight. He stepped into the darkness. Elim, I called at before you go, tell me one more thing. He turned. This evolution, the people who will outgrow death, how many are there? His eyes glowed faintly. Very few, he said, at first. And me? I whispered. How do I know this is real, that I'm not losing my mind? He bowed his head slightly. You will know, he said, the next time the light speaks your name. And then he was gone, just like that. The cabin felt enormous without him. I sat down slowly, hands trembling, heart pounding with a strange mixture of terror and hope. I could still feel the chamber inside me like an echo. I could still feel the warmth of the presence that had spoken, and now that I'm writing this, now that I'm breathing again, now that the world feels thinner, brighter, nearer, I think I understand what he meant. I feel it deep inside me, changing, awakening, uncoiling like a sleeping star. And if I'm right, if what happened in that chamber wasn't a hallucination or a dream or a delusion, then I need you to hear me clearly. Death isn't coming for me anymore, not the way it comes for others, not the way it once came for my father, not the way it's supposed to come for every human being. Something inside me has begun to outgrow it, something Elim called the deathless seed, and I think, God help me, I think it's already started to bloom.